Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecini. We are presented by The Athletic. Today on the show, James Edwards is in the building. It's the doldrums of summer. It's August 9th in the United States right now. And, we need some stuff to talk about. And the most requested team that the listeners of this show have wanted to talk about, and I swear this is true, it is the Detroit Pistons, the team that James Edwards covers over in Michigan. James, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing much, brother. Good to see you. Where did this excitement? I don't even know if it's excitement. Like, where did this come from? Did people just enjoy Ausar at Summer League, or do you just have a lot of Pistons fans, you think?
I think it's probably a combo of having some Pistons fans because I have you on the show pretty regularly. Yeah. I think that it's probably a bit of excitement over what Cade Cunningham did with Team USA.
Yep.
And I think that generally this is an exciting basketball team worth talking about. What we're going to talk about is we're going to talk a little bit about, Cade Cunningham and Team USA and the actual Team USA, not just the select team. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk certainly about the Detroit Pistons. We'll probably start there a little bit more than anything else. And then, I don't know, we'll probably take questions. I want to talk a little bit about this Matt and Ryan Bewley thing at the end. Like, I don't know if, James really even knows anything other than the Bewleys, but
yeah,
I'm fascinated by it in a number of ways, including their eligibility. But more than anything, I'm excited to talk about things with James. How has the offseason been since Summer League, James?
It's been good, man. Yeah, Summer League was after Summer League, which it was great to see you out there. Post Summer League, I finally got to relax a little bit. It was obviously the first half of the summer was kind of had to stay on alert because they were doing the coaching search, and the coaching search went into the combine. I think they hired Monty right a week and a half before the draft. So you go to draft, and then the quick turnaround from draft to Summer League. So very chaotic first half of the season or summer. And then since Summer League, I was able to chill out. I went to San Francisco for a weekend and hung out. It's been chill, and I got some more vacation coming up. So it's been much needed, but I'm also kind of starting to get excited for basketball again too. A little earlier than usual, which is weird.
Yeah, I'm starting to get excited for basketball as well. I think that some of these Euro trips and foreign trips that colleges are going on have my gears turning a little bit. Mm-hmm. Pretty excited about that. It's been nice. I mean, look, I've taken some time to myself finally. It's been good to get out of bed instead of at 6 o'clock. I can roll out at 8 o'clock. That's typically a really nice strategy. But, look, if Steph Curry can get on stage with Paramore and go sing, I can take some time, I think.
Steph's had a wild summer. Not wild, but he's had a pretty active summer between the Paramore thing, obviously golf. You see stuff here and there, and then even his workouts too. They've been posting more Steph workouts. You see him and Luka in the lab together. Shout out to Steph. I think Warriors sneaky. Can you consider him sneaky? And I don't know. I think the Warriors are going to do some damage this year. I think that we might get one more Warriors run.
I think we're getting another Warriors run, and I think we're getting it with or without Chris Paul. I don't know what they're going to do with that Chris Paul contract yet. Maybe they keep him. Maybe they like the idea of him running the second unit, or maybe they use it in the same way that they use D'Angelo Russell's free agency sign and trade, where they use it as a placeholder max contract and then move him at the deadline. I'm fascinated. They have more flexibility between the Chris Paul deal and some of their prospects than they've ever had, in my opinion. Because I think that they can now make a case for moving some of those guys. But
I think we see it too. I think it comes before camp. That's going to be my, I don't know if it's a hot take, but that's going to be my take.
At least.
Yep. I think it's going to be, at least Kuminga and CP are gone before camp. And I have no knowledge. I cover the Pistons. If people are listening, please don't aggregate this. This is just me being a fan.
Yeah, no, this is not. We're just guessing here. We have no idea. I'm fascinated. They have the assets to do some stuff, and it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. Okay, now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this thing, which is I want to start with Cade Cunningham because I think Cade Cunningham is the thing that people are most excited about. Cade Cunningham went and played for the USA Select team, and in the first set of scrimmages, dominated.
Yep.
Unequivocally dominated in the ways that you expect Cade Cunningham to dominate. If you go and you watch the tape, it's like, okay, he's just getting to his spots methodically because he is smarter and bigger and stronger than everybody that you will see at the guard position, save for like Luka, essentially.
Yep.
It was the exact kind of thing that I think Pistons fans were really excited about going into last season.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Cade gets hurt. So I want to start here.
Yeah.
Before Cade got hurt, he started poorly over the course of like the first 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not enough people recognize just how good he was over like, the back,
like the last 7.
of his, of his, unfortunately shortened season.
Yep.
Explain to me what you saw from Cade Cunningham last season that was so exciting, because when I watched him, I was like, oh no, this is real. Like this is immediately real. And I think people have just completely forgotten about those last like 7 or so games where he was just like a total stud.
Yeah, and I understand it, right? And I try to tell Pistons fans this all the time, is like, we all watch Cade. We all know what he's capable of. Obviously, nationally, the Pistons don't get the attention. Out of sight, out of mind for Cade. People will just kind of, I don't want to say dismiss, but it's like, yeah, like I said, out of sight, out of mind. And they maybe knock him down on a few things. Oh, he's injury prone. I don't think that's the case, right? That he hasn't been there to show on a national stage. To get to your question, the biggest difference that I remember is the first 5 games he was trying to get to the rim, and he was challenging the Mitchell Robinsons of the world. He was challenging, I'm trying to think who they played early in the year. I don't know, the Porzingis is the big 7-foot rim protectors, and he was really struggling. He would go into a crowd, he would try to finish over him, and it was not working. Then you saw like at game 6, he started settling. I don't want to say settle. He started to alter his approach and his attack, and he went to the mid-range. He didn't always go all the way to the hole. And if you go and look at the numbers, during that last 7 games he played, again, small sample size, but I remember I wrote a story. I think he led the league. If he wasn't number 1, he was like number 2 or 3 in mid-range jumper efficiency. And that was the biggest thing. If you go back and watch that tape, you watch the first 5 games, you're like, why is Cade challenging this guy at the rim? Why is he challenging this guy at the rim? And then it clicked for him. And like, I think that's one of my favorite things about Cade as a player is the self-awareness. He's not going to jump over a lot of guys. He's not going to beat a lot of big men around the rim. Mm-hmm. So what he does is he gets to his spots in the mid-range where his jump shot is translated immensely from college. And he was able to look in the mirror and realize, like, I'm not finishing well at the rim. I'm a great mid-range shooter. You can shoot the mid-range if you shoot the percentage that I shoot. And he knocked him down. And that was the biggest change for me. Just the change in shot selection, the change in finding his spots on the floor and using his size. And at that time, he didn't even have the frame that he has now, but just using his size to shoot over guys, it was night and day, just the approach, and it really worked for him.
Well, I think the thing that I want to, note here is obviously the addition of Monty Williams, right?
Yeah.
Going to get Monty, I think not enough people are making, I think people aren't making enough of the idea of how stylistically similar at times Cade Cunningham and Devin Booker can actually look.
Yep.
Devin has this reputation as being, one of the best shooters in the NBA. He's this, he's that. And last season really was the first one where it was like 3 levels. He was showcasing that consistently all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You look back through like his first few years, Devin Booker was a good shooter. Like there's a reason that for his career, he is a 35% 3-point shooter. You look at his 4th season in the league, he shot 32% from 3. 5th season, 35%. 6th season, 34%. Over the last 2 years, he's been at like 37% from 3, taking a ton of them and taking a lot of tough ones, obviously. But I think that the key that people just don't recognize is that Devin is a guy that really likes to operate in that mid-range area, really likes to operate in similar ways to how Cade likes to operate. And I think that what we're going to see is a lot of very similar sets to what the Suns ran for Devin to get him free. And I think it's really going to loosen up for Cade and really make things a lot easier for him to operate at a high level. Obviously they're going to have the Jalen Duren idea, and we'll talk about him momentarily, just in terms of being that DeAndre Ayton style rim runner. And frankly, like, he's a more willing, consistent rim runner as opposed to short roller than what DeAndre is, which I think is a little bit more valuable for this Pistons construction. They have Bojan Bogdanovic, who's going to play in that, like, Cam Johnson / Mikal Bridges role as a shooter, floor spacer, who can also like create in secondary ball screen opportunities. The big thing is just figuring out what they're going to do at guard, right? With Jaden Ivey and with Ausar Thompson and everything like that. They're going to have to figure out that second guard position, but there are a lot of similarities, I think, stylistically, in terms of the build of this Pistons team, centralized around Cade in a similar way to how the Phoenix Suns were built, centralized around Devin Booker, with all of the pieces around him working to make Devin the best player that he could be. I think that all of the Pistons pieces around Cade work together in synergy with Monty to make Cade the best player that he can be.
Couldn't agree more. I asked Monty at his introductory press conference, what did he see in terms of similarities between the two teams? And when I say that, I meant like the Suns when he took over. Aside from, obviously, people can make the correlation. Detroit fans are hoping this is the case. Monty took over. They went from 19 to 35 wins, which is a massive leap. So Pistons fans are obviously hoping the similar leap comes. And if you look at the roster of Detroit, assuming everybody's healthy, it's not a 17-win team. They're not. I'm not saying they were a 30-win team last year if they got relatively good health, but they're not a 17-win team, right? So the jump doesn't look as the jump. If they make the jump, it's going to look a lot more drastic than it probably actually is. But even stylistically, like you said, that to me was the correlation immediately, because aside from just Devin, CP3 shooting a lot of middies. That's what we know him for. KD shooting a lot of middies. They shot a lot of mid-range jumpers as a team. And obviously people talk about the analytics. Well, you talk to anybody in the NBA, they don't frown against the mid-range when you can hit it. And they have three of the best mid-range shooters of the last 10 years, 20, 15 years on their roster. And Cade, small sample size, but based on what he showed in flashes last year and even as a rookie, like he's going to be in that territory of an elite mid-range shooter. And I think, like you said, there are going to be sets run to set him up. I think that's going to help Jaden too, because he'll be able to, they'll find ways to get the ball in his hand. And obviously instead of like grabbing and going, like there's going to be situations where he's going to set up half court offense to get Cade those opportunities too. So I love that point that you make. It was something that I initially like thought of as soon as the Monty hiring happened, because they were a high volume mid-range team and I believe a high efficient mid-range team. And Detroit, especially Cade, that's going to be something that I think they really try to utilize, because he's so comfortable with it, and it's going to open up so much more. And I think, like you said, they're going to have to figure out some stuff. Do they start Isaiah Stewart at the 4, Bojan, Jaden? Do they go Bojan at the 4 and give up some maybe rebounding and defense and go Ausar? I think they end up starting with Stu, because I think they do believe in the shot. So offensively, maybe put him in the corner. I believe in the shot. We've talked about it. You believe in the shot. You wrote it in your draft.
To an extent.
I'm not saying he's like a 38% three-point shooter, but I think there's a world he gets to 34, 35.
Honestly, like he might be a 38% 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
On 4 shots a game or something. It's just whether or not he gets guarded out there.
Exactly.
Right. Like that's the big question. Like our team's always just going to collapse on Cade at the expense of leaving Isaiah open, or can he get to a level where he's like comfortable taking them at volume to where teams are like, oh shit, like we actually have to get out on him.
Yep.
That's where the difference is going to be. I don't know if I see that necessarily, but I think he'll make them when he's open.
Agreed.
Like I think, like I feel pretty good about that. I agree with you. I think they probably do start with Isaiah at the end of the day, and I think that's probably a pretty smart move, if only because a big piece of being able to operate in the mid-range, as the Phoenix Suns under Monty Williams and Devin Booker showed, you do need great shooters, and you need spacing around those guys so that when players pull up from the mid range, they're not getting like double contested. They're not getting like, the primary contest from the front. And then also, the defender is snaking around the screen defensively, trying to get around, goes over the top and contests rear view window while
Right.
also getting that front contest. Right.
Yep.
So I think that the spacing is the big thing for them. And I've talked at length about how I'm like pretty worried about this overall roster construction from a spacing perspective.
Mhm.
Like I'm worried about Jalen not being able to shoot. I'm worried about Jaden not being able to shoot. And I'm worried about Ausar not being able to shoot. And those being 3 of the 4 guys that realistically are your most important pieces to build around.
Yep.
They really, 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 really need Jaden Ivey to be able to shoot.
Yes, 100%. And I think I think Cade will help him get easier shots.
Yes.
Excuse me. And he did shoot 37% from, I think, February to the end of the season. So just the development there is a good sign, but I agree it needs to be consistent. It needs to not be as forced. And I think it won't be as forced once Cade comes back and he's off ball a little bit more. But I agree with you. Those things do need to happen for it to really click.
Yeah, and the other piece of it, obviously, they draft Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser is an awesome floor spacer.
Mhm.
I'm kind of wondering, like, I know they went out and got Monte Morris. Monte Morris, awesome floor spacer, not a volume 3-point shooter, but somebody that is very comfortable shooting.
Yep.
I kind of think that both of those guys end up playing, like, maybe not both of them, at least one of them ends up playing a bigger role than what people think. This year, it'll probably be Monty, and then next year, it'll probably move into being Marcus at the end of the day. But yeah, I'm truly fascinated by how this goes and where it goes, because it's a truly interesting roster. Like, I think there's a world where they could start Monte Morris and go like Monte, Cade, like Boyan, Stewart, and Duren, and then you bring Jaden and Ausar and Marcus off the bench, and then that's like kind of your 2 through, or your 1 through 3, and then you hope Marcus can shoot. Well, they still have Burks too, so like, what do you do with Burks? You have to have Burks play obviously as well, so maybe Marcus is out of the rotation. But like, I think that there are a lot of different ways they can make it work. The thing that I'm most interested in, though, is how they make it work around Cade, and that's why I wonder if Monte is the one that makes a little bit more sense, because of Monte's ability to shoot from distance with Boyan, with whatever you can get maybe from Isaiah. It's interesting. I think they have a lot of options, I guess, in the backcourt that could work.
I do too. And I'm very curious to see how they make room for it, right? Because I'm with you. I'm a big Marcus Sasser fan, have been, but you kind of look and it's Cade, Jaden playing, Monty, Burks, assuming Burks is still on the team. I've gotten every indication he will be playing. So that's 4 guys. Do they run 3 guards in the second unit? But then it's like, okay, if Asar's not starting, he can't play the 4. They really like Isaiah Livers, who could play the 4. And then obviously one of Bagley or Bagley or Wiseman will play the backup 5. So I know some fans here have talked about like they're worried about the overlap. Well, I'm like, I think it's a good thing to have if Joe Harris is on ice until like December, right? Like we haven't even mentioned Joe Harris or Marcus Sasser is on ice, or even if you need a Killian Hayes in a pinch, right? Like it's not bad to have that in a pinch. So I like the options. I think figuring out the lineups is good. I think they have spacing. It's just figuring out the lineups to make it work is going to be fascinating for sure.
Yeah. And look, like it's weird to have a lineup where I feel like all 15 guys like realistically might play.
Yeah.
Like
they're all in the same bunch. Either like the vets are important or the young guys are still like same age, bring different skill sets. Like you can make a case for all of them.
Yeah. Like it's going to bring like real competition to training camp. Like this is them, and the Thunder to me are the teams where like, oh, like you actually really have to pay attention to training camp here. I mean, there are other teams obviously, but these are the 2 where I'm like, oh, this is going to be like a real competition.
Yeah. Like guys could get traded after camp.
I would expect that it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because look, a piece of this is like, I really like the way that, like, I would expect one of Joe Harris or Alec Burks probably to get moved by January or something like that. I would expect, probably Monte Morris is going to get moved. Although like it's hard because Monty is a dude that has been there, probably has wanted to play for the Pistons for a long time.
Yep.
As a guy that grew up in Flint, right?
Shout out to Flint. Yep.
Yeah. So like he's a dude that like probably really wants to be there on some level. I don't know. I'm fascinated by the way the construct works, but it all works around Cade. Making him work is the best piece here. You go back, and by the way, like, and we're going to talk about more than Cade here momentarily, but I do just want to note, you go back to Devin Booker's third year in Phoenix, they won 21 games. The fourth year, they won 19 games. The fifth year, 34 games. That's when it started to turn.
And that was Monty's first year. Yep.
And that's Monty's first year. It might take a year. Like it really might to make this all make sense and for it to work. But I wouldn't be all that discouraged, I think, if it does. Let's finish on Cade now and talk about what happened with Team USA.
Yeah.
It was just everything that you wanted to see as a Pistons fan, I would imagine. Like truly.
Seriously. And I tagged you in a tweet, and it's multi-layered for me, right? Aside from I've been showing people pictures because Cade's he hasn't done many interviews since he's been on, but he's been around, and I've been showing people like photos of how much muscle he's put on. So I think for people to see how that looks, something they've been wondering, check, right? It looked good. Secondly, there's I think he just got cleared like a month and a half ago, and he looks great shape, right? So that's encouraging. Yeah. Then there's the fact that he had an invitation to go to the U.S. team. Yeah, and I think Pistons fans will love this, and it's something that I don't think locally has been talked about enough. Turning it down to make sure he is ready for the Pistons. And if you talking to Cade, he is very much like takes being the number one pick seriously and all that comes with that.
Yep.
And that is something he really like. He wants to turn the franchise around. He wants that. So like for Pistons fans, like he has a chance to be like, he could have took the U.S. invite and been told the world I'm back. Like you forgot about me, but like he'd rather stay out of the limelight to make sure he's prepared for the Pistons. And then, and then lastly, and the thing I tagged you in, I try to reiterate it to fans. Obviously it's hard when he's not playing or the three ball hasn't fallen like people thought and the team's losing. But this guy has legitimate star potential. And if we're being honest, of everybody that's on the select team and on the big boy team, and you can agree or disagree with me, we didn't have that dialogue on Twitter. He was the most, going into his respective draft, right? Like, would you say he was the most heralded of everybody that is there currently? Right.
Yes.
And so for him to quote unquote dominate the way he did or control the pace or whatever you want to call it, stand out, that is the amazing sign for his stardom, right? That's exactly, like, people might be surprised because they haven't paid attention, but if you watch Cade, you're not surprised. I'm not surprised that he was the second best player in Vegas the last 2 weeks, right? So
yeah, no, I'm with you, honestly. Like, he is the guy that was always the one seen as the all NBA player. Truly, like he is the guy.
Yep.
In a draft that has Evan Mobley, Franz Wagner, Scotty Barnes, all those guys, I'm still riding with Cade. Like I still, that's the guy for me. Like he's the one he's the dude to me. And look, you could take the Pistons like decision to focus on the Pistons season one of two ways. And I would get it if you thought about it this way at first, right? Mm-hmm. Like, look, he's entering an extension eligible season, like off season next season, right?
Yeah.
So his the third year is the most important for guys on rookie scale deals, truly. Yep. And if Cade wants to get a max deal, he's go out and average, 25, 6, and 6. Yep. And I think he can do more than that, frankly, this year. But like, if he goes out and averages 25, 6, and 6, he's getting a max contract from the Detroit Pistons, like unequivocally.
Yep.
So you could take it that way. And honestly, if you did, I'm sure there was some sort of dialogue there with him and his representation and everything like that. But you're 100% right. Like, Cade is a very serious individual in terms of like basketball, taking all of this in the way that you want to take it. Like
Mm-hmm.
he wants to be great. Like he doesn't want to just be good. Like, Anthony Edwards, like coming into the draft was like, yeah, like, I kind of like football. Like people, remember that story that came out, I think literally on draft day or the day before
Yeah.
draft day or wherever, where he was like, yeah, like I kind of like football more than basketball.
And I
It's
love how
never
much his mentality has changed actually since then. Like I feel like I feel like very
100%.
few guys love basketball now more than him. But yes, you are correct.
And it speaks to the fact that we're dealing with an imperfect deck of information pre-draft where
True.
we're dealing with teenagers that are not fully formed individuals,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And the intel that you get pre-draft is not going to be the same as the intel that you get when someone is 22 years old, right?
Yep.
So I say all of this to say Cade has always been very steady with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar with the Thompsons. Like Cade is very similarly minded to them in terms of the way that he thinks about the game, thinks about basketball, cares about basketball, wants to be great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not surprised that any of this is happening. I'm not surprised that he came back from his injury in unbelievable shape. I'm not surprised that he may have like felt a little bit sorry for himself early on, but then just immediately snapped back in and was like, I'm going to be the dude still.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen nothing that worries me about Cade yet. He just got hurt, and I think we're going to be fine.
And I think we both believe in the shot. Like the kid's not going to shoot 31% from three forever.
No, he's going to shoot fine from three. He might operate a little bit more in the mid range, and he might be more of like a 35, 36, 34% from three guy, just because he takes a lot of tough ones, similarly to Luka, similarly to Devin Booker.
Mm-hmm.
But he's going to have the kind of gravity where guys guard him at the end of the day, because you have to guard him. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about some of the other guys in the Pistons. Okay, James. I'm just going to ask you this question, basically, and it's going to be broad, and you can take it whatever direction you want.
Mm-hmm.
What Pistons player are you most intrigued to see this year among like their group of like core players? Like what player are you most looking forward to evaluating, understanding a little bit more about their game, seeing where they settle? Because I think there are a lot of different answers for which you could take this.
When you say core, do you mean like like role players, like non-Cade, potentially more than role players like Cade, Jaden, and Duren, or like are they included?
Cade, Jaden, Duren, Ausar. I think you could include Stewart now that he has his extension done. Like you could there any way you want to go with it.
I mean, for me, Cade's the obvious one because the whole thing revolves around him, but I don't want to go there. There's two for me, and they're both in the front court. Because I think both sneakily can change the trajectory sooner rather than later.
Yep.
I'll start with Duren, who also I heard has more than held his own out there in Vegas and has been impressive.
Yep.
For me, the kid has, I don't want to say kid, the young man has all of the physical.
He's one where you can say kid. I think he is 20 now, 19. He still might be 19. He's 20, I think. No?
I think, or he's just about, he might have just turned 20 or he's about to turn 20. I think, like you said,
19. He's 19.
Yeah, he's 19. So. Yeah, I think he turns 20 in November or something like that.
Yeah.
Offensively, he knows his role right now, and he does it well. Like you said, he truly puts pressure on the rim in the pick and roll. Underrated passer. You know how underrated of a passer is. Like the way I think he's a smart kid. I think he has more. Yeah. He hasn't shown like in spurts. It's been too small of samples, but like if you have to watch every second of every game like I do, it's like, oh, okay.
That's how I've always felt about his passing. Like you'll see these little flashes, but it's not consistent enough to where I'm like, oh, he can really pass. Like I'm like, oh, like there's a world where he might really pass at some point, but there are flashes for sure.
For sure. For me, his ceiling is all on the defensive end. Yeah. He has every physical tool. He is a smart kid. to be like not just a good defender, an elite rim protector. He has every tool to do it. And
Yes.
I think in his first year, you saw flashes of what it could be, but I think the biggest thing is still just getting adjusted. I think for me, the reaction time was just a little too slow still. Just processing everything. Like he's a smart kid. He plays smart. It's just something you got to get used to. And I think once that clicks, if that clicks, they're in very, very good shape. Defensively, he has all the tools to be great. He can guard in space. He has good footwork. He can jump. He can see help coverages. Like he has it. He just got to do it consistently. And then Isaiah Stewart's the other one. And I say that, I know Pistons fans think I have like an Isaiah Stewart tattoo, but I generally just, to me, to see where he was when he started to where he is now, and I'm not saying like he's turned into this all-world player, but you've seen noticeable improvements in his game every single year, even if it's minuscule. And like last year, you saw the 3-ball on decent volume for the first time in his life.
Mm-hmm.
You saw him get run off the 3-point line and make some nice reads, go finish and do a nice dunk. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Him showing, and it was a thing at Washington because they played so much zone. There was question if he could guard in space. He guards pretty well in space. Like
I remember asking him about guarding man to man.
It pisses him off.
He gets mad. Like he gets mad. He's like, "Oh yeah, we'll see." Like he's like, "I've played man to man defense my entire life up until I played at Washington. Yeah. I can guard in space. I can guard man to man." Like he gets mad about it. It's the best. And I love it.
Yeah, it's so awesome, man. And I just think that I believe in the shot as like a guy who could easily knock down 35% from 3 regularly on like 4 or 5 attempts a game. I just think if he's able to play with Duren and the spacing works and he's able to knock down because of what he brings defensively and what him and Duren could bring together defensively, if his shot translates like I think it can, I just think that really changes the trajectory of things because I'm not concerned about Cade. Like I think Cade's going to be fine. I'm not honestly Jaden like surpassed my expectations last year. Like I'm not really worried about Jaden. And I'm not worried about Bojan. I'm not worried about Ausar. Like those guys are going to be fine. Whether Asar is going to obviously there's a ceiling he can get to if he can shoot. Yeah. But even if that doesn't come for a little bit, this is a guy that's going to contribute to winning basketball at some point in his career. So to me, it's like if Duren and Stewart, Duren on defense and Stewart on offense, if those things click, that could change the trajectory for the Pistons sooner rather than later, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for people that may not remember the early Phoenix Suns under Monty Williams, like it was pretty immediate in terms of the difference for DeAndre Ayton defensively as well, especially by the second season under Monty Williams. He got DeAndre pretty engaged defensively now, according to reports. I don't have firsthand information of this. That relationship may have changed in some fundamental way, but there is real reason to believe that Monty Williams will do really good work with Jalen Duren because you're 100% right. He has every tool, every, bit of length, wingspan, athleticism, power, physicality, willingness to be physical, instincts as a defensive rebounder. Like he has everything that you look for. He just isn't instinctually aware enough right now. Like he is not, he doesn't really have a great idea of how to guard in ball screens yet. Particularly is the thing that drives me nuts. I thought he was pretty negative defender last year. It's why I ended up with him second team all NBA. And like, he was like, I think my 9th or 10th best rookie last year, basically.
And that's because fair.
Like I thought that the defense was quite poor, but he's got every tool to be great. Like he can be a top 10 center in the league. He is like low end all-star upside. I think like it could really end up there if it goes right for him. He needs to really focus on that end more than the offensive end because all these dudes, Jaden, Ausar, Cade, they'll find him. He can get 4 points in transition alone every game. He can get 4 points on the offensive glass every game. And then he can get 6 points, just rim running every game. And then you look up, that's 14 points a game without him having to create a shot, without him having to do anything, in terms of handle or, on the block or anything. So it's there's a lot there, I think, for him to be able to do. He can do enough offensively without really working on that part of his game as much as the defensive end. I hope he really works on the defensive end. And yeah, I agree with you on Stewart. Like, Stewart is a part of this core. I know Pistons fans like often forget about him and like, think that you talk about him too much, but he is a part of this core. He was a piece of the first Troy Weaver draft, and he's the one that worked. Like, for that reason alone, he's going to be a part of it, let alone his play. Like, he deserves real credit for what he's done. He gets better every year, like you said.
And people forget too, sorry to interrupt you, he's still only 21. Like, he's very young 21.
Yeah, he just turned 22, but
or he just turned 22. Sorry, yes.
He is somebody that is willing to change his game to be able to make it work for him. Like, you look at him, he shot 55% from the field as a rookie and then shot 44 this year. That might look quite bad, but the reason for that is that his shot diet has changed entirely. He hasn't gotten worse at finishing at the rim, although I'm sure statistically it says that. The reason that he's gotten worse at finishing at the rim is that he's not getting spoon-fed everything right at the rim. Like, he's now, like you said, attacking a closeout occasionally. He has to create his own shot at the rim occasionally. And then on top of it, he's shooting from three now. The big thing for him is the processing on offense. Like, he needs to be able to make passing. It's not just like attack a closeout to finish. It's attack a closeout, make a quick reversal. It's just the quick decision-making for him that needs to speed up. And I think it'll come. Like, he's a worker. He's a battler. Like, that's the dude that you want on a team. Like, you want him on the team.
You bet on those guys. Yeah.
Because he's a hard worker, and you want him on the team because he's the dude that will stand up for Cade, for Jaden, for Ausar, for Jalen Duren if he needs it, although physically he certainly doesn't. Like, he's the one that will be tough and physical and will bring everything that you want from that kind of perspective, I think. Like, he's a perfect guy to give the contract they gave him, in my opinion.
And to take it a step further, and I know it's probably hard for fans to envision it because it hasn't happened. That's the type of big two you want in the postseason. A guy who
I think so too. If the passing and decision making comes, yes.
Right. But especially defensively, who can guard, we'll go 1 through 4, 5, depending on who the 5 is, right? But like, there's a reason that Boston has tried to get him, that New Orleans has tried to get him. You don't hear about Charlotte trying to get him. You don't hear about all due respect, the bottom feeder. These are playoff teams who have tried to get him because they see the value. It goes beyond aesthetically how it looks. Like, you have to get past the aesthetics of Isaiah Stewart. Like, it's not always going to look pretty how you've learned new age basketball players to look, but you see the development, and you see, even if it's just something minuscule, as in, like, again, attacking the closeout and making the right, like, a cross court pass once every 3 games, or just figuring those things out, man. Cause that's just not stuff he was doing early on. And he's had to adapt his game. Like you said, he's not a lob threat. He's not,
no,
he's not a lob threat, and he's not, and he's fine with that. And he knows that, but he's also a guy that's going to put in the work and do, like you said, do what he needs to. So I'm glad that you're banging the drum too, because I know Pistons fans are tired of me saying it. So I'm glad somebody from outside of the circuit, the Detroit circuit is agreeing with me, so I don't sound like a crazy person every time I talk about it.
No, like, I think he's like a legit top 6 player on a good team at some point. Like, I truly believe that. Like, it might be as a third big that plays 27 minutes a night or whatever, but it also might be as a starter. Like, that's a real potential outcome for him, in my opinion. Okay, let's talk about the 2 backcourt guys. You just wrote about Ausar Thompson for today, actually.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really fun. You talked to Luke Cooper and you talked to people around him, and just how Ausar is a total gym rat. Yeah. And he truly loves basketball. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast. Like, and I've literally talked to them on this podcast before. Like, the Thompsons, their love of basketball just can't go overstated enough. Like, they truly, truly adore it. Tell me some of the stuff that you learned just about this in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big thing for me, and just getting to know him the last month and being around him I met him at the draft, practices prior to summer league. Summer league, first of all, smart kid, man. Like
They're both whip smart.
Yeah,
Like
both whip
really, really smart.
You can tell that they were raised well. You can almost tell like at some point that they were homeschooled. Like there is a shyness to them, but there's also like some bravado to them. Like it's almost very endearing. Like there's some nice shit talk that they do, but it's also like, I don't know, man. It's hard to describe. Like they're just they're just different. Like they're different kids, and it's in like the best way possible. But you see those clips of him and Amen being able to like name guys like Wong Juju and just like the most random players, and I'm like, oh, these guys are like really like basketball heads. So like to learn and talking to Luke Cooper and other people, like of course Ausar, like his gym's closed, and instead of finding another gym, he goes to a playground. Or
it's the best.
Yeah, right. Or like of course he didn't feel comfortable about some subtle move that him and Luke did that Luke wasn't even focusing on, but he didn't feel comfortable doing it, didn't say anything, and calls him at 1 a.m. to say he mastered it in his bedroom. Or the fact that like he's so adamant to be good and knows that shooting isn't a strong point, that when he misses 2 in a row, he gets down on himself. And one thing Luke talked about, who was, for those who don't know, Luke Cooper, he was the OTE head trainer, skills trainer, while Ausar and Amen were there, trying to change his mindset to be, if you miss 2 shots, good shooters think the third one's going in. So like just adopting those mindsets, but it's very clear that he's hard on himself. It's very clear that he's a student of the game. And it's very clear that, and I learned this most at summer league, and that's what made me want to like learn how hard this kid learn it really true. Because you could, oh my gosh, this kid works hard. Like that story is like, you could almost maybe write it about everybody, but like you believe it if you watch these kids play and if you've talked to these kids. And to see him at summer league having the instincts to just go up at the highest point and get rebounds, right? And I think me and you have talked about this. I don't think the average fan, as trivial as it sounds, a lot of players in the NBA don't know how to cut, and they don't.
Oh yeah, yep.
Like,
yep.
It is
it's my thing that drives me nuts about Brandon Miller, for instance. Like Brandon Miller is not a cutter. Like he's good at a lot of different things, but he's not a cutter.
No.
Ausar and Amen to an extent, but more Ausar like really knows how to cut from having played years upon years off the ball.
Yeah, and so like natural winning plays like that. And as I've covered the league more, and I've been around it, and I've just really absorbed it in this type of way, which just talking to coaches and picking their brain, and then playing pickup. And you, like as a kid or growing up playing AAU in high school, you always kind of like were annoyed by the kid that like could only do something with the ball in his hands. And then as you get into this, like you really appreciate the guys who impact the game without needing the ball. And you also learn how rare that is. Like, not like we just said, not many guys in this league cut. And Ausar's ability to just impact the game in so many ways just like is very telling of not only how he was taught the game, how he interprets the game, but at his essence, he just wants to win. Like,
no, it's Iguodala like to me, that's the point of comparison for Ausar. It is Andre Iguodala like he is.
Did you hear when Troy said that? Did you see his quote? Did it like
no?
It didn't stamp because I think you put it in one of your either mocks or big boards.
I'm sure I put it in the draft guide.
Yeah, you had it in one of those
I've been talking about for a long time. Yeah.
And then I asked Troy, offensively, being having multi-positional ball handlers, and what does he see Ausar? He's like, I see early Andre Iguodala. I almost sent it to you. I didn't know if you saw it. Yeah, he said the same thing.
That's funny. Yeah. No, I that's who I've always seen with him. Like it's that kind of skill set, and that's why I had him, as a top 8 or 9 guy. Like I had him clearly in that tier of players. And honestly, like after we did the podcast earlier this week with Adam talking about like these bigger guards that kind of may or may not always translate, I kind of wish I'd had him. I think it's 7 as opposed to where I had him, which I think was 8. I think I wish I would have had him over Anthony Black, to be honest. But
you had Black ahead of him, right?
I did. I definitely
spot ahead of him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Anthony looked good in a couple summer league games.
okay.
That Pistons game is the one in my head.
The Pistons one was amazing. The last
Yeah.
two were like, okay.
Okay.
The Ausar experiment's going to be really interesting, and I have no idea how he's going to play this year. Like
Same.
if he spent like a couple of games like in the G League, that would not surprise me, just because they might want to get him real on ball reps
Yes.
at times, and like they just don't exist on this roster like right now for him.
Yep. And
like
I want them to be utilized that way too. Like I think we should see secondary ball handlers SAR lineups.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, I just, you have Jaden, you have Cade, you have Monte Morris. Like Monte Morris is going to play on this team.
Yeah.
Monte Morris is a top 30 point guard in the NBA. He's going to play. Like Marcus Sasser is 23 years old, I think, by this season. Like he's good and he's going to play basketball for the Detroit Pistons probably at some point this year. Maybe not a ton, but like he should play a pretty real amount for them. He's really good and ready defensively, and he can shoot the shit out of the basketball.
Yep.
So like, I don't know. The more I think about the Pistons, the more I'm like kind of talking myself into like their win total over under. And we'll talk about that at the end maybe. But the last guy I want to talk about here is Jaden Ivey. And he feels like the forgotten guy on some level because like the new guy will always get talked about most with Ausar, right? And then Cade and Jalen go and they play at Team USA camp and play really well together, particularly. Jaden has like kind of a forgettable summer league. Like I know Pistons fans will say, oh, he played better in the second game, but I thought he turned the ball over like crazy. And, it was not as exciting as what I'd hoped it would be. And Stewart signs the extension, obviously. So like people were talking about that and everything, but like, I think Jaden had a great rookie year last year that went like way under the radar, especially in the second half. He started very poorly.
He did.
But by the second half, offensively, he was really quite good. The defense like needs a lot of work, and we'll figure that out. And hopefully Monty can bring like a real infrastructure there that works for them. But offensively, by the second half of the season, he was actually quite good for a 20-year-old first time. Like this was really his first year playing like a full-time point like role.
And I think it should be said too, like we always say, these rebuilding teams throw young guys into the fire. Like Jaden didn't have Cade and Bojan. Like he was the ball handler, the primary ball handler for about 40 games at this end of the year. And that's when he got better, right? Like when he got more responsibilities, he got better. I didn't know what to expect from Jaden coming in. We had both kind of talked about what we heard in terms of like the pre-draft process and how other teams saw him and just kind of the struggles at Purdue. But then you see him and you get around him. And again, this is another cliche. The kid works his ass off. He loves his teammates. Obviously he can get emotional and it shows at times, but it's always in like good. He's not like upset because he didn't get the ball, or he's not upset because like it's rooted in winning and losing.
I think some scouts took that the wrong way.
Agreed.
Yeah, with him, it was always born out of competitiveness.
100%.
He's really, really competitive. And that's why I had him like in the same tier as like Paulo and Chet and Jabari. I like thought that he was really good and that it was all the emotionality you would see was born out of him just really wanting to fucking win.
100%. And man, I've said this to him. I've said this to people I've talked to, and maybe it's prisoner of the moment. I've been covering the NBA for 6 years, watched it my whole life as a nut. I just can't really recall a rookie who improved in his weaknesses within the same season the way Jaden did. To start the year, didn't know how to change speeds. By the end of the year, had 3 or 4 gears. To start the year, couldn't hit a mid-range jumper to save his life. By the end of the year, was like high 40s in the mid-range. Struggled to shoot the 3 ball, shot 37% from 3 without Cade, without Bojan, without extra eyes from February to the end of April. I agree defensively there needs to be work. I thought he got a little bit better in terms of just like trying to get her at least around ball screens. I think the biggest step he has to make defensively is like off ball. He falls
Yeah.
asleep a lot. But talking to him this summer, I did a Q&A, and like all he kept talking about was defense. Like he didn't even want to talk about offense. So like I know that was an emphasis for him.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. And I just, again, it could be prisoner of the moment, but like for a guy to get better at areas that were like significant weaknesses in November and December, and those were like became strengths in February and March, it's like a tip of the cap. And then you see how hard he works, and he's always the last one off the floor. It just makes so much sense. So yeah, he really he was very impressive to me his rookie year.
Well, and I did a podcast with Jason Timp in February or March, can't remember. And the whole conceit of the podcast was basically, Jason, I want you to come on and we're going to talk about 5 guys. I'm going to pick 2 and you pick 3 that we think are future all-stars. Some of them will be a little bit more off the radar. Some of them will be like, you might pick someone that is just like on the cusp, right?
Yeah, I remember this one.
Like his guy was Jaden. Like, and Jason's really fucking smart. And it was just like this guy, like the way that he moves is different in terms of the changing speeds, in terms of the explosiveness, the athleticism, everything. Jason, I'm working on, for listeners of the show, I'm working on getting Jason on again before the end of the off season. Jason's the best.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. But yeah, I've seen nothing that makes me think that Jaden is going to be anything other than really good. Like I know the turnovers remain an issue. I know that you can point to a number of different factors. The defense is the biggest issue.
Yep.
I think turnovers will improve with a second ball handler out there with Cade. I think the shooting was okay. Like if you look at his last 46 games, he took 5 3-pointers a game, made them at 37%, took 5 free throws a game, made them at 76%. He has touch. Like it's going to be fine there. The issue, the big number statistically, was the turnovers. Like he was at 3.6 turnovers per game.
That's to finish a little better around the rim too.
Has to finish better around the rim. Again, I think that you can point to spacing there. Like this Pistons team just had no spacing at all whatsoever. But 17 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists over his last 46 games is pretty terrific, I think.
Yeah.
Like
and
that's a really good rookie year.
And without 3 starters from basically, when did Bojan sit out? February. Stu went out in January. Cade was out in November. I think Bojan went out end of March or end of February. So very impressive, man. Very, very impressive. He exceeded my expectations for sure.
So this is going to be my last question.
Let's do it.
On the Pistons. Their last 2.
Okay.
Who is the starting lineup for the Detroit Pistons? On opening night, we'll say.
Yeah. My gut tells me Cade, Ivey, Bojan, Stu, Duren.
I think that's probably the most likely outcome. I do wonder if we're like underestimating how good Monte Morris is.
Yep, that's fair.
But Monte has been a backup before. I think he'd probably be okay with being like a 28-minute per game backup, especially being at home.
Do you think there's a world? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you think there's a world where they start Monty, Jaden, and Cade because Cade could guard threes?
Would move Bojan down to the 4 and
or
then
have Bojan be the 6th man and just.
I mean, if they were to trade Bojan, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think they won't start Bojan.
I agree. I'm with you on that. Yeah. I was just floating that out there.
Yeah.
Can I give you a sneaky starting lineup?
Yeah. Yeah. Do it.
Say Stu doesn't shoot well in camp and off season and preseason. Cade, Ivey, Bojan, Livers, Duren.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Isaiah Livers at all. I know that they quite like him.
Yes.
Is like a good rotation guy long term, and he can really shoot. Like, I think they would probably start Monty over Livers, would be my bet. But I think there's like a real spot for Livers in that lineup. The other one is Burks. Like you might go Jaden, Burks, Cade, Bojan, and Jalen Duren. Yep. They have a number of different potential outcomes. I really think it's going to be like a camp battle. I don't think it's going to be like we're coming in with an idea. We're doing this. We're doing that. I think it's going to be a camp battle, and we're going to find out. Here's my
wish we
last
could watch
question.
camp, man. Gosh, we don't get to.
We got to find out. Here's my last question. How many games did the Pistons win this year?
I hate you.
I know.
All right. So this is my logic. All right. You ready? As somebody who had to watch every game up close, personal. 17 wins. There were 4 or 5 without Cade, Bojan, and Stu that they probably should have won, where they're up like double digits with like 3 minutes left.
Yep.
So they get you, the Clippers one's like the most insane one, when they're up 14 with 4 minutes left and end up losing it. Like there's like 4 or 5 games without those 3, I believe, that they should have won. So that gets you to 21-22. I think Cade. I mean, I don't want to. I think they get. Can I give you a minimum? I think minimum 30. I think they get to 30 to 33.
My number was going to be 32. I think they win 32.
We're in the same.
I think Cade is probably worth 7 wins, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think having Monte Morris is worth a few wins, like actually, just in terms of having real depth.
Yep.
I think, and then internal, and like that's having real backcourt like players with Cade and with Monte who can handle the ball and who will stop them from turning it over and will actually like help them quite a bit. Yep. I think that's worth like 12 wins alone. And I think that gets you to 29. And then I think they maybe get a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
I think that's probably about where it settles. The biggest thing for me is defense.
Mm-hmm.
If they show any tangible growth on defense, I think they might win like 35 or 36.
I think
like,
that's fair.
I just think that they're probably more likely than not probably going to be a bottom, 6 defensive team in the league, unless Monty like really figures it out with Duren, like in the offseason. Look, Duren's so young that I think it's probably pretty unlikely that he's going to come in and just be like an awesome defender from the jump. But if he does, then I mean, all bets are off. I think if Cade stays healthy, like there's like real play-in potential, I think. But my guess is that it's probably more like 32. They finish like 25th in defense and maybe like 16th in offense, something like that. And it's a real improvement year. Everyone's excited and everyone's pretty happy in Detroit.
Agreed. I should throw the caution out there to the Pistons fans. If they make a 15-win turnaround and don't make the play-in, that's still a very good season. 15-win turnaround is not easy to do. It's not. It's very hard to do. So I think I agree with you. I think if they get to 32 or more, I think there's a great taste in everybody's mouth about this thing. And obviously it depends on how it looks. Like if they get to 32 wins, 33 wins, because Bojan's averaging 30 a game but Cade's struggling, like that's a different story. But the odds of that happening are low, right? So
yeah. And someone asked in the comments, do they make the play-in? My guess is no. I think I would go against the play-in at this point, but
yeah, same.
I don't think it's like out of the question. Like it's just hard. Like, so I think the Hornets will be worse than they are. Look, I mean, the Magic, I think, are right in their boat. Like they could very easily take a leap. I think the Wizards will be worse than they are for sure. I think that Indiana is right in their boat, but Indiana has like the year of real actual growth. They're a year ahead basically. So I think it's probably unlikely. Chicago, look, the wheels could fall off in Chicago, but
same with Toronto.
As of right now, Chicago has Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, so that's unlikely. And then as of right now, Toronto has Pascal Siakam, so I think that's pretty unlikely. So we'll see. Okay, I want to talk about Team USA very briefly. Do you have any thoughts on Team USA? Very briefly. Who are you excited to watch? Let's go with that. Who's the player you're most excited to watch on Team USA?
My country cousin. Yeah, my country cousin, Anthony Edwards. I just want to see him be the best player there. Like I believe in Ant so much, and we were talking about earlier on the pod. Like I just love the change, and like I want to cover him so bad, man. Like I just think he would be so much fun to cover, both like on the court and off the court. But just his change in mentality, his approach to life, his approach to the game. Like, I want to see him. I fell in love with Ant like the moment he gave Michigan State 35 or whatever it was, his first ever college game. And it's
Oh,
like,
the
oh
Maui
my
bump was real.
gosh, he busted State's ass, and I would just always loved his game, and to just see him evolve as a internally and his game evolve. I want to see him be the best player there. I want everybody to like, we go as Ant goes, because I think he has it in him. And I think he really can. And then obviously a little bit biased, Jaren Jackson. Obviously another guy who's gotten a lot of rave out of camp, but I just think Triple J has so much, like, I still think like he's only scratched the surface. He just has to stay healthy. I think people talk about the way people talk about Evan Mobley is how I think people should talk about Jaren Jackson. Not to say that they shouldn't talk about Evan Mobley that way too, but I don't think Jaren. I think people realize he's really good, but I don't think people realize. I think there's like another, like there's above a really good for Jaren.
Yeah,
Jackson.
I think people talk about Jaren Jackson as if he is like kind of this more finished product, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone knows that Jaren is better than Evan right now. It's
right.
more that like
the projection
Jaren is
I'm
closer
saying,
to the ceiling. Yeah, whereas Evan just has all of this ceiling left, right?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. Like I was probably going to say Jaren. That was going to be my guy. Like I'm most excited to see what Jaren looks like in international competition.
Yes.
I think that could look really good. Like he might be like
good.
a total monster in international competition. Like he might win them this competition. Like just being how good he is. He just has to stay out of foul trouble. 5 fouls as opposed to 6, I think is actually like a fairly big difference for him. And the way the game is called could sometimes be an issue. What I will say though, is I'm very interested in something Steve Kerr said recently, where he said that they're going to play Paulo at the 5. And
I missed that.
That is something that I have been like so intrigued by for Orlando to try. And I hope that he plays it really well this year or in this tournament. And then it gives Orlando some real ideas in terms of playing him at the 5 and some of the ways they could utilize him in effective sets that way.
That unlocks their entire team if he can do it effectively.
That
changes things. That changes things. Because of the bigger forwards they have, like they need to find ways to get all those. They're all multi-purpose ball handlers, can pass. Like I'm with you, man. I think that if it goes well, I think that unlocks a lot of things for Orlando.
Yeah, seeing Paulo at the 5, I think, is the one for me. Look, they have Wendell Carter. Wendell Carter's on one of the best contracts in the NBA. Yeah, like if you're Orlando, you got to be ecstatic to have him. It's just like I want to see what it looks like. I want to see what Paulo at the 5 looks like, because that is a fun potential arrangement. Look, Anthony Edwards is probably the right answer here, if I'm being completely honest. But
I like the Paulo pick because it's like very like
from an evaluation perspective.
Yeah,
I want to see it. Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about is Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves looked awesome in that game against Puerto Rico.
I love Austin Reeves.
He looked so good. Like just filling it. Like everyone talks about like the way he affects the Lakers and stuff, but even on Team USA, like he's filling every single gap. I think people have like way underrated what his upside is. Like his upside is like what Gordon Hayward's upside was.
Just about to say that.
Yeah. And Gordon was like a multi-time guy that got like multiple max contracts and would be like a 20 to 23 5-5 guy with any sort of health realistically. Like he just can't stay healthy anymore. If Austin stays healthy, I think that like he's what people thought Gordon Hayward might be at the end of the day.
I'm pissed nobody made the Lakers sweat.
I think the Spurs should have. The Spurs were the team to me.
I'm with you.
The Spurs should have given him like 3 years, because what it would have been, they could have given him like 3 years, 60, and then essentially made it like team option or no player option on the 3rd year, and like made it really hard for the Lakers. I think the Lakers would have matched like undeniably, and it wouldn't have even been a question. But like if I was the Spurs, I would 100% do that. And obviously, like, Austin Reeves would have done that because he's getting more money over a one shorter year, plus you get the extension eligible situation where you're extending off 35 as opposed to like the small number that he can't really extend off of now.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that was one that I think people really missed out on, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, I'm a big Austin Reeves fan, man. Love what I just love those glue guys, and I don't know if glue guy is the right way to describe him, but I guess what I mean by that is the guys that make everything tick. Like the Lakers
guys that make everything easier for their teammates.
Yeah, like the Lakers are much worse teams if Austin Reeves did not play last year. I don't think like the average fan maybe recognizes that. Austin Reeves was the third best player on a team, and you can almost maybe say 2.5 best player on a team that had LeBron and AD, right? Like that. I love the third guy that knows his role. Like that's like one of my favorite players in basketball. The third guy that's like effective, efficient, and can take over a game, but he can also take a back seat. Play like I love that guy in the NBA when done right.
The crazy thing with Reeves is we now have like a 40 game sample. Like over his last 21 games of the regular season last year, he averaged 18 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 turnovers, shooting 57% from the field, 44 from 3, 86 from the line. And then the playoffs last year in 16 games, he averaged 17, 4, and 5, shooting 46, 44, 90. So like, it's basically like 17 and a half, 4 and 5 while shooting 50, 40, 50, 42, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
50, 42,
yep.
87.
Yep.
It's just those are crazy numbers.
Insane. At
for
the
a
highest
second
level.
year guy. Yeah. And he did it against like playoff teams for the back half of that.
Right.
So he's a dude. He's a real dude that I think people like kind of give him the, like, he's one of those dudes where you can say like Lakers fans overrate him and, the general public underrates him. So like, it's hard to get a gauge for
it's
people.
Like cool story, bro. It's like, no,
what it is.
He's good.
Yeah. And look, like it probably helps being like the white guy on the Lakers, right? Like realistically,
right.
But he's really good at basketball. Like he's really, really good at basketball. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about here. I have no idea. Like this Ryan and Matt Bewley thing like came out of nowhere to me.
Yeah, explain this to me, man.
So Ryan and Matt Bewley were, along with the Thompson twins, among the first people to sign with Overtime Elite. And reportedly they got, 7 figures between the two of them in order to sign with Overtime Elite. And my understanding is that like that makes you a professional. I really wonder how this is going to work eligibility wise more than anything. The Bewleys have now committed to Chicago State to play basketball. Chicago State, sneaky fun roster if the Bewleys do get eligible. They have a kid named Wesley Cardette that was really good last year. And I think, sneaky NBA prospect long term. He's a guy that I really liked coming out of high school, actually, too. Like I got yelled at by one of our guys for ranking him really high in like our available players thing because he was a late commit and he committed to Samford because I think that like he had a family member on staff and then ended up having to transfer to Chicago State.
Where's he from?
I know. Where is he from? Where is Wesley Cardette from? Why am I forgetting this? He is from Florida.
Florida. Okay.
Yeah. But that kid's really good. And if they get eligible, like Chicago State will be pretty good. Be actually like pretty good at basketball this year. After being just like a total nightmare to where I thought there was like a 5% chance Mark Titus might get that job whenever he decided to campaign for it a few years ago.
Yeah. Shout out to Mark Titus.
And by the way, you can't ignore the fact that Titus moved to Chicago and this got done. Can't ignore it. I'm just saying, you never know.
Connect the dots. I love that.
Connect the dots. Are there dots to connect? Who's to say?
We'll find out.
So the Bewleys, I'm like very confused on how they're eligible for college basketball. Maybe like these overtime payments are somehow being qualified as NIL payments somehow.
That would be the
Like,
question I have.
Like, cause like it's an on, like maybe you could say they're advertising for Overtime Elite or for Overtime, the brand in some way. And that's how you've like made these payments into their account. Maybe they're paying back the money. I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm very confused on how they would be eligible. Here's what I'll say about them as players. I don't think they're like 5-star quality players like they were previously ranked.
Okay.
They're like low end, high major, like high end, you know, A10, you know, Mountain West,
Right.
like leagues like that.
Yeah.
They'd be really, really good in those leagues. They could stick, I think, at the high major level. So for them to be going to Chicago State, it's a great get for Chicago State. Like it's going to be phenomenal.
Right.
I have no idea. Like, I want to learn what this is an honest question. Like people like hit me. Like I want to know how they're eligible. Like I'm curious. I've sent out like 5 or 6 texts, and the people I've asked are like, I have no idea how they will be eligible. You know, great question. No change. Like it's all just like people wondering.
Nobody knows.
Basically.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. So if you know, I would love to hear how they're going to be eligible.
Yeah, I absolutely don't. But yeah, if you're listening to this and know, please let us know.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, James
yeah.
don't know. I certainly don't know. I would love to hear.
Maybe if they give the money back, and since they haven't played, and then maybe they know they'll make that same money in NIL.
I mean, maybe that's an interesting one. Like, could they make the same money in NIL that they made previously, and then they get their college eligibility? Okay, like if they pay it back, and then that's an interesting concept. I don't know if
I'm
they can
OTE,
get eligible.
I want the money back. You didn't play.
I don't know if I want the money back by if I'm OTE. I don't think I want to give it back if I'm the Bewleys, because I don't know if I'm making it back to play basketball in that way.
For sure.
So like I think OTE, like look, I think OTE got what they wanted out of the deal. Like the Bewleys and the Thompsons were 2 really big decisions that solidified them in the space of going and getting players. Like whatever you think of the Bewleys, with how well regarded they were at the time, and with what OTE has gone on to do in terms of continuing to get players and making themselves solidified in the space, it was a worthwhile investment for them no matter what.
That's fair. Fair.
If I'm the Bewleys, like I don't want to give that money back.
Yeah, you're right. That's fair. I mean, I wouldn't want to, but
yeah, I want to go find a different spot.
Yeah, that's fair. You're right.
But I think that they should play college. Like that's their level right now. Like I think college makes sense for them, and I like really want to see it. I hope they get eligible. Like I think it'd be really good for the Bewleys to be eligible to play college basketball, and I think it'd be good for college basketball for the Bewleys to be eligible. I'm just like a little bit questionable on what it looks like, I guess.
Yeah, if you end up getting an answer from somebody, send it my way because I want to know.
I will. I'm curious. James, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on in your life.
I am on Twitter at JL Edwards III. You can find me at The Athletic on the Pistons tab, NBA tab. I have a story now, or I have a story up now on Ausar Thompson. I think I titled it something like The Basketball Obsessed Ausar Thompson. If you wanted to see a bunch of anecdotes about just kind of how hard the kid works, just mentally where he's at. Just stories about him in the process from leaving OT to get to the Pistons. So you could check that out. Bun and Cardigan Show is my podcast. The Bun and Cardigan Show. It's a Pistons podcast. Right now we're like not talking much Pistons, but it's fun. It's an eccentric listen, I think. So if you're looking for a new podcast after you are done listening to Game Theory, turn on that one. And that's it. I appreciate you having me on as always, brother. Always good to talk to you. Always good to chat with you. And
I'd do it before you get on vacation, man.
I cannot wait. I'm about to hit the golf course. I'm going to Toronto. I can't wait.
Yeah, my wife and I are going up north at some point to Queensland. We're doing like beaches and all that stuff. So it's going to be tremendous. Couldn't be more pumped. Go to The Athletic. I have a top 60 mock draft for 2024 up that I wrote earlier this week. I wrote about like some of the commitments late last week as well. That's the last stuff I've written. I'm kind of working on some bigger projects right now. Don't know how long it'll be until I write next. Could be next week, could be this week. Who knows, right? Could be news that comes this week. But I will keep you guys in the loop on that. We will be back either today or tomorrow, or either tomorrow or the next day, because I want to talk about the Pascal Siakam trade market at some point here. We're going to do a similar breakdown to what we did with James Harden and Damian Lillard with Siakam, because his whole situation is endlessly fascinating to me. But that's where I'm at. Until next time, we'll talk soon.